If you really hone in on those drivers, right, those KPIs, those things, your actual processes and the people, if you really hone in on that, you can get your unfair advantage. That means if everybody's raising their hand because they're having the best month ever, you're still crushing them. And then it really pays off in times of lean when everybody else is struggling and leaving, right, and crying that they can't make money. We control our own success. Then you can change some of those processes. You can change your buying habits. You can change some of those people and those things you do, how you do business to still stay profitable.
Welcome to the Strategy with Jason podcast. Tune in for everything you need to know regarding the automotive industry. Here's your host, Jason Harris.
Hey, what's going on, Podcast Nation? It is Jason Harris here, and thank you for joining me on another episode of Strategy with Jason. All right, today I have a very special guest. I have the one, the only, I'm told, oh so famous, Mike Boyd with me for Repair on Demand. How you doing, man?
Doing very well. Famous in my own mind.
Yeah,
I don't know if anybody else would verify
Somebody
that, but
told me last night.
I think it was me.
Actually, it may have been
It may have been me. It was good wine, so I mean that can really change what you say.
Well, hey everyone, if you're out there watching, listening, we are here in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's hot outside, but we're super cool in here, and we have some great content and some awesome topics. I'm so excited to kind of get into this with you today. But Mike, I love kicking off these podcasts with a little origin story. Amen, because I'm fundamentally fascinated.
How far, when you say origin story, how far do you want to go down that well?
It was a rainy night, and I was born in a... No, I'm just kidding. No, we won't go back that far. But how did you get started in this crazy world we call the automotive industry?
So the short story is I wanted to be a professional actor. And that was what I really wanted to do. I mean, like, I'm going for it. And I remember going to my father, and I'm like, I'm going for it. I'm going to put it on the line. And he sat me down and explained what the percentages were that I was going to be successful and what starvation really was like. Sure. And I was like, well, what do I do? He goes, well, because I talked about going to the military. He goes, well, before you do that, why don't you try selling cars? So I went to sign up for the military. And while I was waiting to get in, because it was going to be very specialized after they tested, and I was waiting to get called, like you're going in. So I went to sell cars, and my first month, I made a lot of money. So finally, when I got the call, like around the second month, they're like, okay, we can take you in now for training. Yeah. I remember looking at the paycheck, and I was like, no, I'm good. How much are you going to pay?
That's what I did on my last deal.
Yeah, no. So that was roughly about 30 years ago.
So you got bit by the bug.
I did, and I really liked it. I usually explain, especially to my children, that it's like gambling every day. You know, while you go in and you have an idea of what you're going to do, you never quite know how the day's going to turn out.
Right.
And if you piece together enough of the good days, you keep coming back for more. And that was 30 years ago.
And once it's in your blood, it's in your blood, isn't it?
It is.
Have you ever tried to walk away? I'm curious. I'm just curious.
No, actually, well, I did kind of. Okay. So, you know, I had 25 years, well, somewhere around 23 years. Yeah. And then I started a software company while running a store. Imagine that one, right? I didn't even buy my first laptop until I left the dealership world. But I had a software company. I created iRecon Cars at that time, and then I left running the dealership to go full-time work for myself. I bet it all. So that was kind of leaving.
Yeah, but not really. It was still automotive adjacent.
Yes, yeah, because that's really what I knew.
Yeah.
So I had a 2-year plan, and almost to the date, within 2 years, I was acquired by vAuto. Wow. And became part of vAuto, and I rebranded as iRecon, and that's where I was for the last 5 years. I left there about a year and a half ago. It was a wonderful experience. And then now, of course, I'm managing director for Repair 360 as part of Repair on Demand.
And what a full circle, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean,
it was definitely not what I thought.
How in the world did you plan?
And in between that, I also became a licensed auctioneer. So I would also auctioneer. I like to be on the stage.
Happen? Like, what was that? Like, just
so my
were
wife
you bored
is
one day, and you're like, I'm going to go do this.
So you go to auto auctions, and of course, everybody loves to listen to auctioneers.
Well, sure, that's fine.
And my wife, we've been now married about 23 to 25 years, something like that. She'd be able to tell you exactly. She became a third-generation auctioneer, and it was a lot of fun watching her. And I'm like, well, I want to do that too because it's something the family can do. Third generation, yeah. So I went to school, did night school while running a store to become an auctioneer because they don't teach you how to do the chant or any of that. Yeah. did all the training and the classes, passed the exams, because, I mean, you're licensed through the state of Ohio, Department of Agriculture. So then I became a licensed auctioneer, and I did that mainly for contesting and for fun and to help out. And then I started doing that a lot more, obviously, later on in life. Yeah,
That's awesome. That's a good hobby to have now.
it is. It's a lot of fun. You know, I went from, I believe I'm naturally introverted, as funny as that sounds, but in order to
I wouldn't assume most
fake,
auctioneers would say that. But.
yeah, in order to fake extroversion, I have to keep myself out in front of people.
Oh, then that forced you to do it.
It does. And then I wanted to be an actor, right? So I like all eyes on me. So it kind of feeds in.
It hit all your buttons.
It hit all the buttons, right? I always say it
still
scratches my
automotive
brain.
Adjacent. See, you can't get away from this.
Absolutely.
You can't get away from it.
I wouldn't want to.
I'm super excited to get into some of our topics. Once I saw what you would be speaking about here at Digital Dealer, I was like, man, I got to reach out to Mike because how timely is some of these topics.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's what a used car manager has kind of gone through, what used car operations have gone through.
It's completely different.
It's like a punching bag over the last 24, 36 months plus. And it's just
Absolutely.
like and just how much evolution has had to happen. We just had to evolve in so many different ways. I mean, I remember my first used car manager, right? He was the one that told me he threw the keys up on the roof from letting the guy leave. You know what I mean?
It's funny. You tell that story, and I had that happen because I cut my teeth in Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah.
And with some big dealerships, and I always hear the story of throwing keys on top of the dealerships. I absolutely have seen that.
Did you really?
My
I've only heard the
managers,
story.
my managers, just like yours, were the reason why used car guys and used car sales managers have a bad rap. We absolutely deserved it. I always tell the story of like my first sales manager. It was like my second day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so who am I reporting to? Who's my sales manager? And then this Cadillac, because Lexus wasn't really around. This is 30 years ago. Cadillac pulls in and they're like, well, he'll be pouring out of that car in a minute. And I'm like, pouring out? And he opens up the door and the guy almost falls out, like drunk, very charismatic, just a horrible, great salesperson at the time. It's a completely different world back then, right? But yeah, there's a reason why we got a bad rap. We're still paying for it now. It's a little bit different.
Well,
a little bit different.
A little bit, and sometimes the same. Sometimes the same. But no. It's funny how we kind of talk about what a used car manager was then and how it looks today. I know we got a chance to talk a little bit before we started recording, but how much of a, a day trader you have to be, a data analysis individual.
Well, the old 60 day is now less than 30.
I know.
Less than 30.
You're practically playing landlord with the spots that are on your lot. And you're like, and if that tenant ain't paying up, you're booting it and getting another tenant.
Doesn't even matter if it costs me money to get rid of them. I'll make more money on the next one.
The demand has been so high. But I'm curious, just in your perspective, right? Just like, what is the state of the union right now in the used car operations, and where do we need to be moving over the next 12, 24 months?
So, whenever somebody asks me about the current state of the union for automotive, it's always in flux. It's never been any different. It was 30 years ago. It was a different market, but we were different people. The client was different. The employee was different. So when you look at the market now, yes, there's lots of challenges. I mean, with the hurricane, we're going to have a lot of challenges coming.
Yes.
But whether it was back then or even today, but more so today because of the day trading, really, the mindset you have to take is that it's all data driven. Am I really making money? I mean, looking at gross profit is dead. It's dead. Because that's like looking at your check and saying, I made X amount of dollars. That's not the amount of money that got deposited into your account.
No, and it fluctuates so often.
So often. So really it's understanding how to work best with your teams, control your costs. What are the drivers? Because I've always focused in my entire career, and a lot of times I would say things in my career that even I didn't fully realize what I was saying, but they were actually semi-intelligent, thank goodness. But when I look back, I was always about efficiency. Even before I really knew I was about efficiency. So I always said, hey, I can sell 60 to 70% of my inventory without a salesperson. The salespeople, their job is getting the other 30 to 40%.
Right.
And that's the way I approached it. So I'm like, okay, if I have better processes, better acquisition strategies, if I control my costs and I put the best product that I can out there for the money and I stay on top of the market, the rest will take care of itself. Now it's even more critical, of not overpricing, not underpricing, not over reconditioning, not under reconditioning, because most dealerships over recondition.
They do.
versus the value. So really now I'm about the value you're creating, because if you're doing the reconditioning process correctly, it's a value creation, and then understanding who that end user is going to be to price it and create that reconditioning process for them.
Well, and that was always a battle at my dealership. I mean, it was, I think we went through almost 4 different models, as far as
changing all the time, right?
Well, yeah, because none of them are really kind of set right. You were always kind of figuring out what was working and what wasn't working. Like I'm just saying, it's changed so much. There's so many big commitments. Well, look, I know you got this amazing session tomorrow, and you get just chock full of some amazing stuff. And we will try to put a link up to this. So
excellent, thank you.
Session, what would be maybe like for the people out there that obviously aren't able to attend? What would be like 3 key takeaways? You're like, hey, if you're not there, these are the things that were really important.
3 key takeaways is that today, everybody says you have to be data driven, but I think you really have to take it back a step and understand what are the drivers of the data. So understanding really basic business principles like cycle time, throughput, really what does efficiency mean, and then who are the people that you're doing business with. So that's your resources, right? So the right KPIs, the right resources, and the right strategies.
It's kind of this balance. This balance of kind of what I call it people, process, and technology. And it's usually when I find when an operations is not at its peak performance, there's some imbalance in between one of those 3.
Absolutely.
Something's not connecting.
And it's something that people really don't realize even today. I mean, we use technology for almost everything we do at a dealership. An average dealership has around 15 different pieces of technology. If you look at the back office, the front, and everything we do is how we buy cars, how we price cars, how we sell cars. But less than, I think, 30% of dealerships out there really use a software to control their reconditioning process.
I know.
And remember, your reconditioning process is a value creation device if it's done correctly. If not,
that's a great
it's a
perspective,
devaluation
As I say, that is
process.
that's a really, really great perspective, and maybe that's my marketing brain kicking in right now, because that speaks to me from a marketer's perspective, right? I'm like, okay, so it's like, but I need to communicate that to the marketing team, right? Because if I'm going through and I'm creating this value, but then I don't communicate
that's
that
the
value.
cross-team collaboration, right? So
Yes.
no, it really is a virtuous circle, right? Or cycle, if you do it correctly. So if you look at, when I say the value creation, okay, great, you put new tires on it.
Yeah.
But if nobody knows, doesn't really matter, because if you look at the average consumer and you said, hey, you could have bought this car for $1,000 less and it had 6 30-seconds, and it had plenty of tread life left, they probably been like, I didn't know the difference and I would have been fine. And that's not a bad car. Those aren't bad tires. But we talk ourselves into the old way of doing things without really understanding what we're doing. We're slowing down our turn. Are we slowing down the turn, or is the end user really going to value the tires? And are we using that information as a selling incentive to influence either the price or the turn, or both, if you do it correctly, by utilizing our marketing team? And do your salespeople even know?
Exactly. And
Right.
what's funny, I don't feel like this is relatively a new topic. I feel like we've been talking about this for a very long
I don't even know if
time.
you can come up with a new topic nowadays. It's just different perspectives.
But it's funny, I still don't see this well executed.
No, it's horribly executed.
I mean, now, I will say where I do see this really well executed is in the private seller market, because they are amazing at telling you, I just did the brake job.
Correct.
I just put brand new struts in the front. I just
because they have a vested interest in the car. They've actually taken ownership of the vehicle. And I think that's that's a great key takeaway there. So if you look at each piece of inventory and you look at the number of spots you have on your lot, now your goal is to turn over those spots as many times as possible profitably. You can turn them over and not be profitable because of bad practices earlier on, right?
Yes.
But if you look at it and say, okay, if I look at each vehicle like I owned it, what's unique about it, what's standard about it, and what are those unique selling features, or what could I do to influence the outcome? Again, that outcome being your turn rate and profit. Hopefully you get both to move in the right direction, right? But if you can only influence one, which one do you need to focus in on? And that should help determine the right reconditioning strategy. And the right reconditioning strategy, if executed with the right resources, the people, the processes, the places. So your vendors, your vendors, huge opportunity, right?
Oh, huge.
Your own technicians, everything goes together to make money and turn that vehicle faster.
Well, and it just creates also just much better communication, right?
It does.
I mean, I couldn't tell you, and you guys know this too. This happened to you, I guarantee it. You know, it's like I got a customer coming in, and all of a sudden it just went to like the dentless repair guy, and like I'm like, it took me whatever weeks.
Oh, I would
to
lose
get this
my
person.
mind.
I would throw crap.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I'm just like, how in the hell?
And that's the old way.
It took me 2 weeks to get this guy.
That
to come
is the
in.
old way of doing it. But yet, remember, less than 30% of the market uses an actual software to control their reconditioning
So
process.
is it that old? Because I bet you it's still happening. Today.
No, it still happens. Predominantly amount of time you have where there's a lot of disconnect,
Yes.
right? So when we talk about cross-team collaboration or just collaboration in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
Big hot topic word that's never gone away and never will. How can you have collaboration if there are gate holders to the information and you don't even know who the gate holder is?
Mm-hmm.
So if whether you're a BDC, the salesperson or sales manager, or your service or your vendor, everybody should have a clear line of sight into where your vehicles are in the reconditioning process.
100%.
If not, you will never be efficient. You will never be able to spot inefficiency. So before you can even get to efficient, understand where you're currently at.
That's a good point. Because
Then
if
you
you don't
can
know,
grow.
you don't know.
You don't know what to improve upon.
Yeah.
Right. So if you put it in a clear and open situation, like through software,
Yeah.
right. That's why I'm so passionate about reconditioning and Repair 360 is that you put all eyes on the prize.
Mm-hmm.
Then everybody. I mean, at first you're going to have a lot of noise. You're going to have a lot of people. That's great. That's
Yes.
the first stage of communication, right? And then you sort through the noise. Everybody starts to understand their voice, and they actually have a voice in it because it takes everyone to be profitable today.
Yep.
And then it's like, okay, why are we doing what we're doing? How can we do it better? Oh, that's actually what we're trying to do? Yet we all have the same name on the dealership.
Well,
That's the part that kills me. We all work for the same people.
But there's been constant battle. I mean, I dealt with this as an owner many
Mm-hmm.
times, right? I can't tell you how many times I had to sit down with my used car manager, just listen to him vent for 15 minutes how my service manager is raping him
Overcharges me
across
and
the
takes too
calls,
long.
and it's just like, this one's not even done. He said it was going to be done, and I'm just like, oh, for the love of God. And then to your point, what I have to remind them, it's one name out there. All right, this is not a business over here and a business over here. It's all underneath one roof, you know. But here's what I found, and I'd love to get your perspective on this. I found that after I sit down with both these guys, all right, really what was going on was just a fundamental breakdown in communication.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's what it was.
So again, I look back at the way I think and the way I look at things, and I say, okay, that's great. It is communication, but let's take it back a step. Yes, you can have meetings. Those are great. And it's amazing how you can have some unity and some clarity after a meeting, but that
course.
goes away quickly, especially when you start thinking about commission and pay scales. So I really challenge dealers to look at, one, it is a cross-team collaboration. What are those common KPIs? What are those common things that everybody can align on that's what's best for the dealership for profitability and efficiency? And then tie those into their individual KPIs because people naturally are going to protect their own interests. So if you look at and I would challenge any dealer, I mean, I'm challenging every dealer who's on here, look at the commission scales or look at how you're paying the service department, your vendors, your salespeople, your sales managers, and ask yourself, what would you be looking at and focusing in
Are
on
they in line
because you
with the
need to feed
objective?
your family?
Yes.
Do those correlate and end up pointing everybody in the right direction, or is everybody going to be at odds? So
Yes.
while you can prey upon people to hopefully that they'll do the right thing and work for the name on the building, everything's right. And I believe in my heart that people want
Generally,
to do the
100%.
right thing.
Totally.
But at the end of the day, you can remove so much discourse having clear communication, aligning the overall goal of the dealership so everybody truly knows what is the goal of the dealership, what does success look like,
Yes.
and then backtracking it to those individual people and those individual KPIs so that way, again, it all aligns and you have clear lines of communication. Take it back a few steps.
But to your point, like alignment comes in the form of aligned pay structures to the objective, right? And I think for everyone out there watching and listening, this is something you guys really got to take a note of, right? Right? Just because you share the objective and everybody understands the objective, that's not alignment. They can, to your point, they can walk out of the meeting and go, yeah, boss, I'm in. First name on the building, one group, one team, sounds
Right.
good. All right? Until they sit back down and something comes up and they're like, oh, my pay plan says if I do not, no,
Right.
And I find that, and I love the fact you bring this up, Mike, and I hope this is, I imagine this is a big part of your conversation.
Absolutely it is.
Because I have found 9 times out of 10, all right, if the objective has been cleared, but there's not alignment on the objective,
It doesn't matter.
Almost always comes back to the pay structure.
It absolutely does. And when you think pay structure, I mean, you're going to pay those different departments differently. That
course.
makes sense because you want to incentivize the behavior proportionate to the way they can affect the outcome. That
Yes.
just makes sense. But as a team, we all got to do the same thing. We all just play different positions,
Of course.
right? But again, start at the top and say, what is the overall goal for the dealership? Align everybody's efforts and then tie those KPIs. So when you're looking at like cycle time, you know, how long does it take me to get a car from acquisition to ready for sale? That is a KPI that can absolutely affect both your sales and service department
In a huge way.
in a huge way, right? Because sales is always going to want cars on the lot faster. They need inventory.
Well, the faster I get them a lot, the more money I make on them. That's
Right, because you're not going to miss. Well, you're going to have a lot less chance of missing that optimal window
Yes.
because those windows are tightening.
Those
They're
are.
getting smaller
They get, all the time they are.
all the time. And then service, the more cars they can cycle through, the more cars you can sell, the more cars are going to come back in for them to service. So really, if you think about it, you can tie certain
like that
KPIs.
perspective.
It's not necessarily changing their commission scale. You absolutely can change some of the incentives,
Yes.
right? But the core scales are really the same, but it's aligning what those core KPIs are. So you can say, hey, look, you may have made X, but you were not successful in what you were supposed to do for the dealership.
And I'm confident you've seen this play out. I mean,
Absolutely.
I mean, Mike, over the years, I'm sure you've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I'm not talking about the movie, but it's a great movie. isn't
Great
it?
movie.
God, it's a good one. Sorry, we go rapid. Scroll sometimes. But no, when you've seen this play out the way you described it, all right, what does that look like?
So again, the first thing I tell dealerships, so let's talk about software, right? You have to have a center point
That's true.
where everybody can meet without calling. Like don't ask somebody to pick up the phone and give you an update. Everybody needs to
I mean,
have
my
a clear
WhatsApp-
view.
My WhatsApp channel is not good enough.
Yeah, no. So they need to be able to have their own unique access point
Yeah.
to the common center of information, right? So your software, so like we use Repair 360, which has different views catered to the people. So whether it's service looking at it, that's a different perspective. It's a different viewpoint.
Yeah.
Just as valuable as the sales, but they're looking for different pieces of information. They both, again, tie into the same thing. The first thing you're going to have is some discourse, right? Because for the first time, everybody has a voice at the table. It's not just whoever's loudest. You can start pointing to data and going, hey, Jason, why'd you do this?
Yeah.
That is good. Encourage that. Structure that, though, right? There needs to be some adults in there.
structure.
There needs to be some
Right.
managers.
The tech and process, right? Here
Right.
we go.
Some managers need to be there, and then you say, okay, this is how we start having those lines of communication, and we start seeing how we are cross-functioning and how we're collaborative. That means we depend upon each other to do certain things. And then you can start picking out the lowest hanging fruit.
So speaking of the lowest hanging fruit, and I think for anybody out there watching and listening right now, I think a lot of people are buying what we're laying. Like
Absolutely,
I think I think a fair amount of you guys are
Sure.
nodding your head along with
Sure.
those things. But it's like, where do I start? So what would be some of the lowest hanging fruit that you would first go after?
So stage one, you need a visualization. So when we start talking about lean principles, like I need a visualization of my current process. Do not go in and just say, we're dysfunctional, we need to do this. Don't tell me you want to be at 3 days when you have no idea what you're currently at. How about we start off with seeing what do we currently do? What does everybody do in the course of their
Just
day?
map the
Just
existing,
map
whatever it
everything,
looks like.
every touch point from the lot tech moving it to where it's parked for trade-in to where it's parked after it's done for service. Map it out. You need a visual map.
Yep.
Then you look at it and say, okay, why do we do that? And then what does that give us? If it's 21, and I'm not exaggerating, the average dealership's around 15 to 18 days, up to 20 days if they truly count everything that they do from the time of acquisition to ready for sale. When I hear people at 3 days, there are some absolutely there, don't get me wrong, but the vast majority of them are only counting one or two things. I'm like, look, last I checked, I'm counting all the pennies and $1. So get a visual understanding of what every single thing you're doing and all the people you interact with.
The way it currently sits.
The way it currently sits. That right there is a huge opportunity because everybody will sit there and go, I had no idea.
Right?
Why are we doing that? And they'll look at their own departments and the people they work with and go, Jason, why do you do that? And then Jason will go, well, because that's the way the guy who taught me 10 years ago did it. And you go, well, that doesn't make sense. And you go, but nobody told me.
Earlier, right?
Right. So then as a team, you can go, okay, so we know the big goal.
Yes.
Right. But if we're at, we'll say 18 days. If we're 18 days, then let's all agree that we need to trim 3. Let's get to 15. Sure. That's huge. That is a huge change, right, in velocity.
It sounds a lot like I'm going to the gym right now. I'm just saying.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't tell me you want to be a bodybuilder when it's your first day.
Let's just get you here first.
Right. Can you make it here 3 days a week?
Well, it's
right?
manageable. But I am with you. Like just the mapping, just the actual writing
You'll learn
down.
so much about your dealership.
I mean, just if you're watching, like, just do that one exercise, and I think you'd be amazed how much you're going to find out.
Yes.
And then, like you said, so next step, just like I said.
So now that you have a visual map,
yep,
and you've got everybody like talking about it, let it play out a little bit. Mm-hmm. Then you start chunking away and say, okay, so we know this doesn't make sense. Well, what can we do short term and long term? So those are 2 different things. It's like, hey, can we short term do this for X, or is this something we need to say, you know what, this is a longer term fix that we need to address with a different set?
Because it's a bigger thing. Maybe it's a technical thing. Maybe one of my line machines are down, or it's blocking this, or whatever.
Right.
It's a bigger one.
But everybody gets alignment,
yes.
Right? And again, that's starting to create that team,
yes,
that cross-team collaboration, because everybody's starting to work together. And then some of the process, like one of the things that I talk about tomorrow in my presentation is the final quality control check. I would challenge all the dealers listening or watching this. Do you have a final quality control check? The vast majority of dealerships don't.
I'm literally, as you're saying it, I'm thinking of the 100+ dealerships I've probably visited over the last year or so, and I'm like, I don't think I've met one.
Right. There needs to be somebody who's empowered at the very end when that last person, last person brought that car. It's ready for sale. It is done everything, the myriad of different things that have to be done.
I love that idea.
And then real
quick, I'm curious.
Yeah.
Who would you recommend? Who would you recommend for that kind
I
of stuff?
personally think the sales manager or one of the managers, but I've seen lot techs.
Okay.
Yeah, because it is a scripted walk around, just like you would do an appraisal.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it doesn't take an advanced eye to do it. Now, me personally, ultimately, I think the sales manager is responsible. Once that car is completed, they own it. It's their job to control that inventory and to sell it. So while you involve everybody at the store up to that point, at that point, there's a clear handoff. So either you can cry foul.
Well, yeah, that's right. It's
you're
having
back.
that last moment,
right?
Because once this passes the line, it's your.
Don't come back to me.
Don't come back and say, "Whoa! You wait a second. You didn't tell me it was going to cost that. Why did we not do
exactly.
Yes,
right?"
Okay.
And
I like that.
Final quality control check is not 20 days later when your salespeople go, well, yeah, that car smells bad. Everybody knows that. That's why we still have it.
Yeah, boss is pulling.
That's not final quality control check, right? So you have somebody you can point to and go, Jason, you checked that car out. You walked around it. Yeah. You knew what was done. You knew it was expected to be done because we have a system that clearly showed everything that we spent money on. You said nothing was deficient. So again, and it's not about placing blame. It's people getting better by increments.
It's efficiency. It's just creating.
It's creating efficiency. It's accountability too, right?
That is true.
So if we're saying, hey, I'm going to walk through this car and we find that X is wrong and we did X, that could just be counseling. It could be going back to your vendor, going back to your technician, going back to your salesperson, whoever.
It could be a small breakdown in the process.
Exactly, and saying, hey, what happened here? Mm-hmm. And then you go, okay, well, that was just a outlier, no big deal.
Sure.
Or that was something we need to actually come together and change, and then you're right, and then it's continuous improvement. So again, you're building that mindset of continuous incremental improvement. So it's not just the big picture, it's not the big things; those little things add up.
Well, and I like the idea of the little things. I'm totally into the little things, right, too, because also I think it's very inspiring for the team, right? Because these little wins, these little things as we're going through them, they add up to actually pretty big differences.
Absolutely.
And you can see that play out. So it's not one of those things where, okay, here's where we're at. 6 months from now, we're going to be over there, and you have to wait 6 months to find out.
Right.
It's like no. It's like I really, really appreciate and love this concept of like, let's separate the big things from the little things, attack them with different strategies.
Correct.
Because, as you're building and developing out this better process, you're getting those quick wins, which gets everybody jacked and excited.
Right. And you sell those wins to your team. The other big thing, when you look at the mentality of sales, and really it's the mentality of just being at a dealership, because whether you're in service or sales, you have to have confidence in the team you work with, either the ones below you, along with you, or above you. So imagine your sales team being able to have confidence that when they have a customer, right, because they're not clients yet, they haven't bought, when they have a customer and they're walking out there, they're not afraid to open up a door and they can speak with confidence about what your dealership does. Because at the end of the day, your name on the dealership, that's a brand. What does your brand stand for? And I think sometimes we forget about that.
Oh, in a huge way. And I love this because it's my marketing brain connecting into it. It's like, all right, not only is this salesperson more confident in the vehicle and why it's priced the way it's priced, but they're also confident that marketing has done their portion of it to ensure that is the one. So how awesome would it be? I get a customer to come in, I'm looking for so-and-so, but I'm looking for the one with the brand new tires. Oh, I know that stock number. Let me go.
My gosh,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, because you're not negotiating a price. Because if you're going in down that road, which is it's a long, old road, right? It's not like when we got in the business. If you're having to negotiate on price above just a small amount, right? Because it's normal. It's part of a lot of people's just the way they engage. They don't know any better. But really think about how much negotiation you're doing. That will tell you a lot about your current process and your current product.
Yeah.
Because either you're priced right and you're marketed right and you've done the right things in your reconditioning process, or you haven't. So if your salespeople are having a tough time, if you're having to negotiate too much, if you're having struggles with inventory turnover, like turning your inventory over and staying profitable in old age, look at your internal processes. Don't just say, give me more opportunities, more ups. Go back to the very step one. How are we getting cars? What type of cars are we getting? What is our current throughput? That's a thing that dealerships really need to focus on, is like, how many cars do I need to stock? How many should I stock? How many am I even set up in my reconditioning process involving everybody to go through?
Yeah, how much can I actually process?
What is your actual capacity?
Because how many times I've seen that play out too, where like used car department has a clear objective, they want to achieve this,
but nothing else changed in the reconditioning process.
Yeah, but like it doesn't mean that can happen over here though.
Yeah.
So creating those data points, like you were talking about when we were first kind of saying, the few things you really take away from it is, but we've never really had a place. And I'm really appreciate the fact that you guys have gone down this path.
That's where the software and the tools step in, because the traditional, and I mean, I'm old, I've been doing this 30 years. The traditional mindset, which I still hear a lot today, is, hey, right now we'll just pick a number. We average 100 cars a month. Well, I want to sell 150. Okay, we'll go buy 70 more than you normally do.
That's the answer to it.
Well, what about, that's great. You will sell some more cars. That is just natural. That's going to happen. But all those other cars and that complete slowdown, that's actually constraint. And one of the things I speak about is I really don't like the term bottleneck. I like constraints.
Okay,
constraints
I want to hear that.
are things that I can actually diagnose. I can
put
a strategy with.
Yes,
I can change. A bottleneck to me is a turn in the road. It is a slowdown in the road because the road veers to the left, right? A constraint is something I can say, you know what, we need to remove that.
We can process our way through
we can either change how we're doing business, the way we're doing business, or we can completely remove that and make it a straight line. So a lot of it is your mindset. And I would much rather have dealerships focus on real business principles and terms, because our business is not unique. We sell product, right? And the more product you sell, if you do it correctly, the more money you make. So it's about cycling through. So if you look at other businesses, whether it's Walmart or Amazon or anything, when you look at that, the main thing they focus on first isn't necessarily the sale. It's all the drivers
that lead
to the sale, because you want to constantly refine that. Because the one thing I can guarantee is whatever your target was today, it'll change tomorrow, and next year it'll be different. That's the continuous incremental improvement. But you can only do that if you're currently looking at that real data, the real KPIs, and the drivers of those behaviors.
Mapping it back to those activities.
Mapping it back to activities and the people who do it.
Well, and anyway, I think no one's surprised that our industry right now, and has been for many, 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 many years, focus so much on just
A sale.
A sale. It's just a sale, right?
Yeah.
We're
It's sexy. Sales is sexy.
Because we're focused on the results.
Right.
Right?
Well,
But,
actually,
you know,
we're
it's like-
focused on what we believe the results are.
That is true.
That's like gross profit.
Like, but like honestly, we gotta Billy Bean this shit. You
Yes.
know, like, okay,
Well,
if you know what Moneyball.
Moneyball.
Right, thank you.
Yeah. Well, that really is, when you look at the very core of it, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's like, look, there's lots of ways to make money.
Yes.
And just because you've always fed your family that way and it's been successful, I would really challenge you to say, maybe there is a more successful way, or at least I have a really better understanding of how I'm currently successful. Then I have the ability to alter and change and adapt to whatever current market I'm in, because the market will always change.
Oh, and it will. It will continually change.
It will. And there'll be
it's-
hurricanes. There's a lot of things coming at us now that we have to prepare for. So right now, think about that.
Well,
you have
yeah.
a hurricane coming.
Okay,
Does that mean there's going to
that's-
be more inventory or less?
Well, so now that's a good question, actually, because maybe it's the Boy Scout coming out in me, and I just kind of do this
Prepare.
naturally, and I never really think that there are a lot of people out there that don't have this mindset.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for me, I was always just like, I got to be prepared.
Right.
You know, it's like I will have a contingency plan in 3 different ways for
Right.
whatever. You know, I mean, I'd even go far as sometimes we say, like, guys, what
That's
would
how you tell the
happen-
difference between an accident and
you know?
negligence.
Well, yeah, I tell my team, I'm like, what would happen if, God forbid, I got sick and you guys had no access to me for 4 weeks? What
Yeah.
would you do? So let's do this. I want to play this out with you. So what do you, right now with what's going on, because I think that's so timely right now, what do you think that preparation should look like right now for any dealers out there watching and listening?
So understanding that inventory is going to be even more of a constraint,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's something we can adjust to. That's something we can work around. So then that's going to put a focus on, one, look at where we get vehicles, how we get vehicles, but even more importantly, and this is in any market. See, this is not unique, but especially now when we know that there are things
What's coming,
coming, right?
yeah.
We know what's coming. We know how it's going to happen. So that means that every piece of inventory has to make even more. So that will absolutely affect the wholesale value, the retail valuations.
Process our way to that profit.
Right. That's a wonderful way. Yeah. So look at what we're doing, how we're spending money. And I'm not a proponent of cutting costs, because we're in business to spend money. Unless you spend money, you're not going to make money. But I think you need to have a very targeted approach to spending money.
Yes.
And you need to look at how
Well,
you're spending money.
Measurable. Target
Measurable,
and measurable.
right.
Right. And this is where I find, there haven't been a lot of systems out there that allowed me to have that measurable element, to it. So it's like, I don't know, like I'm going blind. I'm playing darks blind, until I think what you guys have ultimately kind of put together. And I think there's just another value element to
So
it.
yeah, there's two lines of thought there. So technology is nothing new. I mean, you might have heard of it. You might have used it, right?
Maybe a few
So are there systems? Have there been systems out there? Systems have been around for years and years and years. I know. I created one, right?
Right? Yeah.
If you're waiting for the perfect solution, then you're just telling yourself that you're not ready to play manager. Own
Well,
it.
and
Because there will be
yes.
pushback. There will be resistance to change. If you think you're going to wait for that magic program that everybody just goes, whoo, TikTok, right? And I'll just do it and it'll take off like
Can
that.
I not
No.
hit a button? What do you mean, Mike?
No, because you're going to have to challenge the way people currently feed their families and do things.
Yeah.
That means you have to educate them. You need to train them. You have to support them. But most importantly, you have to give them a tool that they can see that on the other side, that this will actually make me better and make me more money and make us more profitable as a dealership. So adopt a solution. Get a solution. I would absolutely want you to get mine. I really do think it's the best. And it has dual views, and I can just go through that whole litany of features and benefits. But at the end of the day,
a solution is necessary.
get a
100%.
solution. It's
Right.
not your phone.
Well,
and it's
look-
not walking to the back and going, hey, how many cars are you going to detail?
Look,
Wrong answer.
You can't get better. Like, you're not going to lose weight if you don't measure your weight right now.
Well, first, let's
Like,
start-
What are you going to do, right? Like,
Well, so I'm big on analogies. You've said it a number of different ways, but think about it. You're right. If you want to lose weight, let's start with what is your current weight?
exactly.
And then rather than say, hey, I want to lose 50 pounds, 5 would be a lot. That'd be a huge percentage, right?
I'd be down with that.
And then you gain from those wins because you start to get buy-in. You start to change people's behavior. You start to add accountability. And when you say accountability gets thrown around a lot. I think accountability really steps in when people are doing it without being prompted because they understand the reason why.
Unguided execution.
Unguided execution. And then when you truly have that, that's when people are doing that, when sometimes it doesn't necessarily play out in their best favor, but it's what's right for the team, and they know it comes back full circle.
And you mentioned this earlier, none of this happens unless you have that mindset.
It is a mindset
to it, right? Because I call it full belly syndrome.
Right, you never worry about getting
right?
food until you're hungry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right, and it's like I'm
gonna steal that, by the way.
Please do.
Okay.
And well, look, last 5 years has been interesting. We had some times that there was a lot of full belly syndrome.
We've made a lot of money
A lot of
for
full
doing
belly syndrome.
really bad things.
Exactly, and
Right.
and now we're kind of getting back into that place where it's like, what, I need to, like I said, we got to moneyball this, right? We need to be able to effectively measure the activities that are going to get us to the results. If we just have one good month, because how many times this happened, right, guys? This has happened to you too, right? Like, we had that 1 month, everything connected.
We're all high-fiving. We are
each other.
We are the kings of the world.
And then what happens next month, Mike?
Right. That's
We
that's
can't
that
repeat
cyclical up and down,
and
right?
nobody knows. They'll say, well,
Yeah,
I
the
don't know,
stars
guys,
aligned.
the moon,
Yeah.
the stars, they all aligned. And
Look, all business is the same. If you look at, we'll look at like inventory management. And generally when you hear inventory management, it hurts my heart a little bit, but we think about just the acquisition and the purchase. That's not inventory management. That's acquisition and purchase. Inventory management is buying it, controlling your money, because that's what reconditioning is, and then selling it for a profit.
Exactly.
That's inventory management. But when we look back at what we've learned over the last 15, 20 years concerning acquisition, speed to market, cost to market, all those different things, we really honed in on that part, but we've never said, but are we spending the right amount? Are we doing the right things?
Exactly.
How does that affect how we're pricing our cars, our salespeople's confidence in their product, and really how much money is made just in reconditioning alone for the dealership before the car's ever retailed?
Look, if we can measure those activities that were successful, then we can consistently execute, and we don't have.
And you
ups
can
and downs.
change and alter based on current market trends. So,
You mean like a hurricane?
like a hurricane. So you can say, okay, when things are fat and everybody's got, everything's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Don't measure yourself as being successful when everybody is. So I would always challenge my salespeople. It's like when other dealerships of similar make, size, whatever, and everybody's just talk about how great it is and they're the greatest ever and they had a record month, I'd be like, well, everybody had a record month. So you were just average?
Right.
What I see and what I've seen in my experience and my history is that if you really hone in on those drivers, right, those KPIs, those things, your actual processes and the people, if you really hone in on that, you can get your unfair advantage. That means if everybody's raising their hand because they're having the best month ever, you're still crushing them. And then it really pays off in times of lean when
Yes.
everybody else is struggling and leaving, right, and crying that they can't make money. We control our own success. Then you can change some of those processes. You can change your buying habits. You can change some of those people and those things you do, how you do business to still stay profitable. That's the able to pivot. That's a business principle, right? It's like, hey, look, I know you have a plan.
and
I know you're going
you
after
see the
something,
best
but you have to be able to
operators do
pivot.
this.
Absolutely, best
consistently.
operators know that.
Like you've seen it, I've seen it. I mean, this is the difference between the operators and like the real operators. Like,
Correct.
They're able to execute that consistently. Look, Mike,
Business people and car people, right?
Right?
There's a
Yes,
difference.
There is.
It's
there
a
is.
business, yeah.
And you still can be a car person and teach
And
yourself.
our
and
job
build
is
into a
fun.
business
What
person.
we do is
Oh
fun.
my
And it's
gosh,
even
right?
so much more fun when we know we can control the outcome before it's even happened and we all make money.
Yes.
And we all high five.
Right? It's the best.
What I
times.
want to see is dealerships getting together and people walking in and saying, hey, that car we thought was going to take 8 days to get through? 5. That means you hit the market 3 days faster.
Got it done.
That means you have a competitive advantage versus everybody else out in the market.
Yep.
That means you have a pricing advantage. I mean, there's just so many things that it adds up to by paying attention to the little
Fundamentally
things.
changes the way the team acts. It's just there's so much. It trickles down into so many different places.
Yes.
It trickles down into the operations, the bottom line, the culture, the team, the mindset.
And it will show you when you have an opportunity to scale.
Exactly.
Like, when do I add more
There's
service
no
bays?
fear. There's no actually no
There's
fear.
no
of it.
fear because
There's
it's
no fear of it.
data driven, right? It's like, when do I've got 21 service bays. I think I need 25. Wrong answer. You have no idea. You either need 25 or you don't. You can either fill them and support them or you don't. You know, I'm a 100-car store. I want to get to 150. Okay, what does that take? I actually know that right now I can handle another 40 cars without a decline in this area, this area, this area, because I know how many vendors I have. I know how many service technicians. I know what my throughput is. I know what my cycle time is. And I know my acquisition streams.
Exactly.
Oh, my gosh. Now you can actually do what you want against the rest of the market.
Hey,
That's a competitive
if you can
advantage.
consistently bat 100 a month, getting to 150, if you're consistent here, is just that bit more commitment to the process.
Small incremental changes, Kaizen.
100%.
Small incremental changes make all the difference in the world. And it's a mindset.
Yeah. Well, hey, look, I know we're getting towards the tail end of our time, and I think that's a perfect spot because it was so well said. You know, it is. It's that mindset, but it's those small incremental changes. Mike, though, before I let you go, though, I think we've had like just an amazing conversation.
Oh, this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate it.
And I'm sure a lot of you out there watching and listening have enjoyed this as well. For everyone out there who would maybe like to connect with you and continue some part of this conversation, because I still think there's a lot to be uncovered
There is.
here.
There is.
And, you know, between that people, that process, and the technology, and just that consistently stepping up to the plate and executing. What's the best way for someone to connect with you?
So you're welcome to call me personally on my cell phone. I give it out there, 614-554-4447. You can, of course, email me at mike.boyd@repairondemand.com, or please visit our website, repair360.com.
Awesome, man. Hey, thank you so much, man.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it,
This
Jason.
has been a blast. Hey, for everybody out there watching and listening right now, the biggest compliment you can give myself or Mike here is to share the show. All right. If you have a friend or you have a colleague that needs to see some part of the conversation we had today and they'll get some benefit of it, it means the world to us when you guys share the show. Thank you so much for watching. You guys all have an amazing day.
Thanks for tuning in to the Strategy with Jason podcast with your host, Jason Harris. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Happy podcasting.